Commander Li Jin-ho had been sitting in the same spot for 3 hours, and his back was starting to ache. The crystalline chamber of Zerion Prime was beautiful, he had to admit, but it wasn't built for human comfort. Everything here was designed for beings who didn't need to worry about things like sore backs or getting tired from sitting too long. The laughter started small at first, just a few chuckles from the crystal beings in the front row. But then it spread like wildfire through the massive chamber. Soon hundreds of alien representatives were making their version of laughter. Some clicked, others buzzed, and the plasma beings made sounds like radio static, having a good time. Jin-ho kept his face blank, but inside he was burning with embarrassment. He had volunteered for this mission because he believed in humanity's future among the stars. Now he was watching that future get laughed out of the room. Ambassador Velthar stood up from his crystal throne, his body catching the chamber's light and throwing rainbow patterns across the walls. When he spoke, his voice rang like wind chimes. In a storm. Honored members of the Council, please direct your attention to these quaint human vessels. The holographic display in the center of the chamber lit up, showing Earth's pride and joy, the newest destroyers and cruisers that had taken humanity 20 years to build. Jin-ho had served on ships just like these. He knew every bolt and wire in their construction. They were beautiful machines, sleek and deadly. But here, surrounded by ships that could bend space and time, they looked like children's toys. Notice. Other chemical rocket engines, Velthar continued, and Jin-ho could hear the smirk in his crystalline voice. They still burn fuel to create thrust. How primitive. And these nuclear weapons they're so proud of. We used similar devices 10,000 years ago, before we learned to harness the power of stars themselves. Air being made of living liquid metal raised one of its shifting appendages. Are we certain these humans have actually achieved faster-than-light travel? Their ships look like they should be exploring their own moon, not the galaxy. More laughter erupted. Jin-ho's hands clenched into fists under the table, but he kept them hidden. He had been trained for this. Stay calm, stay professional, represent humanity with dignity. Oh, they have FTL capability, said another representative. This one a creature. That looked like a walking tree made of silver. Barely. Their jump drives are so crude they can only manage short hops. It probably took them months just to reach us here. It had taken 6 weeks, actually, but Jin-ho wasn't about to correct them. The council speaker, a being of pure energy contained in a geometric shell, called for order. We are here to vote on humanity's application for membership in the Galactics. Council, all those in favor? Jin-ho held his breath. Silence filled the chamber. All those opposed? The response was immediate and overwhelming. Lights, sounds, and energy signatures filled the air as representative after representative voted. Against humanity. Jin-ho didn't need to count. He could feel the weight of their rejection. The vote is unanimous, announced the speaker. 847 against, with Earth abstaining. Humanity's application for membership is denied, but they weren't done yet. Furthermore, the speaker continued, we hereby establish a protective quarantine around human space. No human vessels will be permitted beyond their current borders without council supervision. For their own safety, naturally, added Velthar, and Jin-ho could practically hear him smiling. The other representatives nodded and made their various sounds of agreement. They were being so generous, protecting these poor backward humans from the dangers of the galaxy. How kind of them. This session is concluded, announced the speaker. One by one, the representatives began to fade, teleport, or simply walk away. Their conversations filled the air, jokes about human technology, and speculation about how long it would take for humanity to destroy itself with its primitive weapons. Soon, Jin-ho was alone in the massive chamber. The lights had dimmed automatically, leaving him sitting in the soft glow of the crystal walls. The echo of their laughter seemed to hang in the air like a bad smell. He pulled out his communication device and opened a channel to Earth. The transmission would take hours to reach home, but he had to send his report. Mission Control, this is Commander Jin-ho. The vote was unsuccessful. Recommend we proceed with alternative protocols. He closed the channel and sat back in his chair. The aliens thought they knew everything about humanity. They had seen Earth's ships and weapons and decided they had seen everything humanity had to offer. They were about to learn how wrong they were. But for now, Jin-Ho just sat in the empty chamber, surrounded by the fading echoes of galactic laughter, and smiled a small secret smile. Admiral Kang Soo-jin was drinking her morning coffee when the alarm started screaming. She had been stationed at Lunar Defense Command for 15 years, and she had never heard the proximity alarms sound quite like this. The coffee mug slipped from her hands and shattered on the floor as she rushed to the main tactical display. The screen was lighting up like a Christmas tree. Red dots appeared one after another near Jupiter's orbit, each one representing a ship dropping out of hyperspace. 5 dots became 10, then 20, then more than she could quickly count. "Admiral," Captain Park Min-seo's voice crackled through the comm from the UES Seoul, humanity's flagship. "We're detecting massive energy signatures, multiple vessels, all of them bigger than anything in our fleet." Soo-jin grabbed her headset and patched into the fleet-wide channel. "All stations, this is Lunar Command. Report status immediately." The responses came flooding in from across the solar system. Mars Colony Control, Europa Research Station, the mining facilities in the asteroid belt. Everyone was seeing the same thing. 50 massive ships had just appeared in their backyard, and they definitely weren't friendly. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission," reported Lieutenant Cho Yun-young from the communication station. It's addressed to all of humanity. Put it through." The voice that filled the command center was unlike anything Soo-jin had ever heard. It was clearly artificial, processed through some kind of translator, but underneath the mechanical tone was something that made her skin crawl. Pure arrogance, the kind of confidence that came from knowing you held all the cards. "Humans of Seoul," the voice began, and Soo-jin could practically hear the sneer. "Your pathetic system now belongs to the Voss hegemony. We have observed your primitive attempts at space travel and have decided that your resources would be better managed under our guidance." Soo-jin felt her jaw clench. These aliens were talking about humanity like they were discussing cattle. "You have exactly 1 of your Earth hours to surrender unconditionally. Your ships will be destroyed, your orbital installations dismantled, and your population relocated to serve the hegemony. You should feel honored. Very few species are considered worthy of serving us directly." The transmission cut off, leaving the command center in stunned silence. "1 hour?" whispered someone behind Soo-jin. "That's it?" Before Soo-jin could respond, the tactical display exploded with new activity. The alien ships were moving, spreading out through the system with military precision, and they were fast, faster than anything humanity had ever built. "Mars Colony, this is Lunar Command," Soo-jin called desperately. "Get your people to the shelters now." "We're trying, Admiral, but they're already here." The voice from Mars was filled with panic. "They're targeting our orbital stations." Soo-jin watched in horror as the dots representing Mars Colony's defense platforms simply disappeared from her screen. One moment they were there, the next they were gone. No explosion, no debris field, just gone. "Europa base, respond," she called. Static filled the channel. Then faintly, "This is Europa base. We're under attack. Our shields are down. They're not even slowing down to aim properly. It's like we're not worth the effort." The transmission cut to static. Soo-jin stared at the tactical display, feeling helpless for the first time in her military career. Earth's entire space force was 30 ships, 30, against 50 vessels that could erase orbital stations with casual ease. "All ships, this is Admiral Kang," she broadcast on the emergency frequency. Every human ship in the system would receive this message. "Form up for defensive positions around Earth. We're going to make them work for it." The response was immediate. Captain Park Min-seo's voice came through first. Seoul acknowledging. "We're moving to intercept." One by one, the voices of humanity's defenders checked in. The UES Busan, the UES Incheon, the UES Daegu, all of them racing toward what would probably be their destruction. Soo-jin watched her ships move on the display. They looked so small compared to the alien fleet, like minnows swimming toward sharks. The first engagement happened near Earth's moon. The UES Seoul and 3 destroyers opened fire with everything they had: railgun rounds, nuclear missiles, plasma torpedoes, humanity's best weapons lighting up the darkness. The alien shields absorbed everything without even flickering. The return fire was almost lazy. beams of energy that moved too fast to track, swept across the human formation. The UES Daegu simply vanished. The others scattered, damaged but still fighting. "Admiral," Captain Park's voice was strained. "Our weapons aren't even scratching them. What are your orders?" Su Jin closed her eyes for a moment. She had trained for this scenario. Overwhelming enemy force, hopeless odds. There was a protocol for this situation, but she had never imagined she would actually have to use it. "All ships, this is Admiral Kang," she transmitted, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "Implement Protocol 7 immediately." Across the solar system, something strange started happening. Every human installation, from the smallest research station to the largest orbital platform, began broadcasting the same signal toward the outer reaches of the solar system. It wasn't a distress call or a surrender message. It was music, ancient Korean poetry mixed with classical symphonies, transmitted on frequencies that the aliens couldn't decode. To the Voss hegemony, it probably sounded like humans had given up and were broadcasting their cultural heritage as some kind of final gesture. They had no idea what they had just awakened. Captain Kim Hi-Rim had been stationed on Pluto base for 3 years, and she was used to the silence. Out here at the edge of the solar system, weeks could pass without hearing another human voice. The base was small, just 12 people maintaining the deep space monitoring arrays that watched for threats from beyond. Most people thought Pluto base was just another early warning station. Even most of the military didn't know what the arrays really did. Hi-Rim had signed papers that would put her in prison for life if she ever talked about her real job. But today, those secrets were about to become very important. The encrypted signal came through at exactly 14:27 ship time. Hi-Rim was eating a terrible freeze-dried meal when every monitor in the communications room lit up at once. The computers had been waiting for this transmission for over 50 years, and now it was finally here. She dropped her fork and ran to the main console. The message was short, just coordinates pointing to empty space beyond Neptune, and 2 words in Old Korean that made her heart race. "Gaona, but wake up." Her hands shook as she entered her authorization codes. The base's main computer verified her identity 3 times before allowing her to proceed. What she was about to do had never been done before, not even in training exercises. "Pluto base to Lunar Command," she transmitted on the emergency channel. "Signal confirmed. All stations are broadcasting the sequence." Admiral Kang's voice crackled back through the static. "Copy that, Pluto base. How long until activation?" Hi-Rim checked her instruments. The signal was already racing toward its destination at the speed of light, but space was vast, and the target was far away. Estimated time to contact, 47 minutes. Understood. Maintain observation and report any changes. Hi-Rim settled in to wait. Around her, the base hummed with new activity. Systems that had been dormant for decades were coming online, drawing power from the station's fusion reactor. The deep space arrays were repositioning themselves, turning toward a patch of space that looked completely empty to anyone who didn't know what to look for. Meanwhile, throughout the solar system, every human installation was broadcasting the same signal. It was hidden inside what sounded like cultural transmissions, ancient poetry mixed with classical music. To anyone listening, it would seem like humanity was sharing their greatest artistic achievements before the end. The Voss hegemony fleet had noticed the broadcasts, but they weren't concerned. Their translation computers couldn't make sense of the poetry, and the music was clearly just noise. Typical human behavior, they decided. These primitive beings were probably trying to preserve their culture before their inevitable destruction. Admiral Morketh of the Voss fleet was actually amused by the broadcasts. "Listen to them," he told his officers. "They're singing songs while we destroy their colonies. How pathetically human." The alien fleet had paused their advance, not out of caution, but out of curiosity. They were intercepting all the human transmissions, trying to understand what the poetry meant. Some of their linguists thought it might be religious prayers. Others believed it was some kind of primitive war chant. They were all wrong. Far away, in the Galactic Council chambers on Zerion Prime, the emergency session was in full swing. News of the attack on humanity had spread quickly, and many representatives had gathered to watch the show. "How long do you think they'll last?" asked Ambassador Velthar, the same crystal being who had mocked humanity 6 months earlier. 6 hours maximum, laughed Representative Kelnara, a floating ball of sentient gas. These humans don't even understand they're about to die. Look at them. They're broadcasting music. Perhaps they think singing will save them, added another representative, causing ripples of laughter throughout the chamber. Betting pools had formed among the various species. Most were wagering on how quickly the human fleet would be destroyed. The longest estimate was 12 hours. The shortest was 30 minutes. "I almost feel sorry for them," said one representative. "They tried so hard to join our civilization, and now they're about to be erased from existence." But none of the galactic powers were paying attention to what was happening at the edge of human space. They were all focused on the battle near Earth, watching humanity's pathetic fleet throw themselves against the Voss hegemony's superior technology. Back on Pluto base, Hive watched her instruments with growing excitement. The signal had reached its destination, and something was responding. Her screens showed gravitational anomalies building in empty space, energy readings that shouldn't exist. "Lunar Command, this is Pluto base," she transmitted. "We have confirmation the target is responding to the signal. Copy that. What's the status?" Hive stared at her readings in amazement. "Power signatures are increasing exponentially. Gravitational distortions are off the charts. Whatever's out there, it's big, really big." She paused, checking her instruments again to make sure she wasn't imagining things. "Admiral, I'm reading mass displacement equivalent to a small moon, but it's moving, and it's moving fast." Through her telescope, she could see space itself beginning to bend and twist. Reality was being stretched like rubber, creating distortions that hurt to look at directly. "How long until it reaches the inner system?" Admiral Kang asked. Hirim did quick calculations. "At current acceleration at 23 minutes. Across the solar system, the human broadcasts continued. Ancient Korean poetry flowed through space, mixed with symphonies and traditional songs. To the aliens, it sounded like a funeral dirge. They had no idea they were listening to a wake-up call. Science Officer Thekmar had been monitoring space for the Voss hegemony for over 2 decades. He had seen stellar phenomena that could drive lesser minds insane, witnessed the birth and death of stars, and catalogued gravitational anomalies that defied explanation. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for what was happening near Neptune. It started as a tiny blip on his instruments, just a small distortion in the fabric of space-time, the kind of thing that happened when asteroids passed too close to gas giants. Thekmar almost ignored it completely. Then the readings got stronger. "Admiral," he called out, his voice uncertain, "I'm detecting some unusual gravitational activity near Neptune." Admiral Morketh was busy reviewing the destruction of the human colonies, savoring each moment of their pathetic resistance. Mars had fallen in minutes. Europa had lasted barely longer. Soon Earth itself would bow before the hegemony's might. "What kind of activity?" Morketh asked without looking up from his tactical display. Thekmar checked his instruments again, hoping he had made a mistake. The readings were getting stronger by the second. "Gravitational waves, Admiral. Very strong. Ones. It's like something massive is moving through space at incredible speed." Now Morketh looked up. "How massive?" "That's the problem, sir. According to these readings, the object has a mass comparable to a small moon, but it's moving at nearly the speed of light. That should be impossible. Nothing that large could accelerate to such speeds without tearing itself apart." Morketh stood up from his command chair and walked over to the science station. He had conquered 17 star systems and destroyed countless civilizations. He knew the laws of physics as well as anyone. "Check your instruments," he ordered. "Your sensors must be malfunctioning." Thekmar ran a full diagnostic. "All systems are functioning normally, Admiral. The readings are accurate. The gravitational waves were getting stronger. Throughout the Voss fleet, navigation systems began to flicker as space itself bent around them. Ships that had been holding perfect formation suddenly found themselves drifting off course. "Admiral," called the communications officer, "we're receiving reports from the entire fleet. Everyone is detecting the same gravitational anomalies." Morketh felt a cold chill run down his spine. In all his years of conquest, he had never encountered anything like this. "Where is it coming from?" "The outer edge of the system, near the 8th planet. Whatever it is, it's heading straight for us." On the bridge of the UES Seoul, Captain Park Min-seo was fighting a losing battle against the Voss destroyers when his science officer suddenly shouted in alarm, "Captain, something's happening near Neptune. My instruments are going crazy." Park looked at his tactical display. The human fleet was down to 18 ships, and they were barely scratching the enemy's shields. But now something new was appearing on the long-range sensors. "What am I looking at?" he asked. "I'm not sure, sir. It's huge. The mass readings don't make sense." Back on the Voss flagship, Thekmar was staring at his screens in disbelief. The gravitational distortions were so strong now that they were affecting the ship's artificial gravity. Objects were floating randomly around the bridge. "Admiral," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "the object it's bigger than I thought, much bigger." "How big?" Thekmar swallowed hard. "The gravitational signature suggests something with the mass of a large moon. But that's impossible. We would have detected something that size long before now." Morketh grabbed the edge of the science console as the ship shuddered under the gravitational stress. "Could it be some kind of weapon?" "I don't know, sir. I've never seen anything like this." That's when space itself began to tear. It started as a small crack in the darkness, like someone had drawn a line across the stars with a knife. But the crack grew wider and wider, spreading across the sky like a wound in reality itself. Light poured out of the tear, not normal light, but something that hurt to look at directly. It was the color of dying stars and newborn galaxies, the light of creation and destruction mixed together. "By the void," whispered Admiral Morketh as he watched the impossible unfold before his eyes. From the wound in space, something emerged that defied every law of physics Thekmar had ever learned. It was a ship, but calling it a ship was like calling a mountain a pebble. The hull stretched beyond the limits of vision, blocking out entire constellations as it moved. "Instruments are failing," reported Thekmar, his voice shaking. "The gravitational field is too strong. My sensors can't measure its true size." The ship, no, the Dreadnought, continued to emerge from its dimensional fold. Weapons batteries the size of cities lined its hull. Engine ports that could swallow asteroids glowed with power that made stars seem dim. And still it kept coming, more and more of the massive vessel appearing from the tear in space. "Impossible," breathed Morketh. "Nothing that large could exist. The materials alone would collapse under their own gravity. But there it was, hanging in space like a small planet that had decided to go to war. Its presence warped reality around it, bending light and time in ways that made Thekmar's instruments scream warnings he had never seen before. Across the galaxy, every advanced civilization detected the gravitational shockwave. Emergency sessions were called on a dozen worlds as scientists tried to explain what they were seeing. In the Galactic Council chambers, the betting pools suddenly went silent. "What is that thing?" stammered Ambassador Velthar. On the screens showing the human system, something impossibly large had appeared near Neptune. It was easily visible even at this distance, a dark shape that seemed to swallow the light around it. "Run the mass calculations again," ordered the council speaker. The results came back the same. The object had the mass of a small world, but it was clearly artificial. It was a ship, a warship, and it belonged to humanity. "How?" whispered one representative. "How did they build something like that?" The answer was floating in space near Neptune, its weapons systems coming online with power signatures that dwarfed small suns. The humans hadn't just been hiding their technology. They had been hiding their entire civilization. Fleet Admiral Choi Dong-min had been asleep for 97 years. Not dead, not in stasis, but in a state between dreams and death that only the most advanced human technology could maintain. When the wake-up call finally came, it took him several minutes to remember where he was. The bridge of the UES Taeguk was exactly as he had left it nearly a century ago. The same tactical displays, the same command chairs, even the same coffee stain on the navigation console where Lieutenant Park had spilled his drink during their last training exercise. But Park was long dead now, along with most of the crew who had helped build this ship. Dong-min stretched his aching joints and looked around at the new faces. These were the great-grandchildren of the people he had known, trained specifically for this moment. They had been born and raised on the Taeguk, their entire lives dedicated to preparing for a war that might never come. "Admiral," said Lieutenant Yun Jia-yun, her voice respectful but excited. "All systems are operational. We're ready for your orders." Dongmin nodded slowly. Through the massive viewport, he could see the Voss hegemony fleet in the distance, their ships looking like toys compared to the Taguk. They had been shooting at the human defenders for hours now, probably wondering why these stubborn humans wouldn't just give up and die. "What's our tactical situation?" he asked. "The enemy has 50 vessels, Admiral. They've destroyed most of our outer colonies and are engaging our defense fleet near Earth. Our forces are not doing well." Dongmin had expected this. The ships Earth had shown to the galaxy were real, but they were never meant to be humanity's main defense. They were decoys designed to make everyone think they understood human military capability. "Sir," another officer called out, "we're receiving surrender demands from the enemy fleet. Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was arrogant and casual, the tone of someone crushing an insect. "Humans of Sol, this is Admiral Morketh of the Voss hegemony. Your resistance has been amusing, but it's time to end this charade. Surrender now, and we might allow some of your species to survive as servants." Dongmin almost smiled. The alien commander sounded exactly like every other conqueror he had faced in his long career. They all made the same mistake. They confused technology with wisdom, firepower with strength. "Lieutenant Yun," he said quietly, "open channels to all frequencies, every ship, every station, every civilization in the galaxy. I want everyone to hear this." The communications officer's hands flew over her controls. "Channels open, Admiral. Broadcasting on all known frequencies." Dongmin stood up from his command chair and faced the main display. His voice was calm and steady, the voice of a man who had seen 3 centuries of war and learned that true strength came from restraint, not aggression. "This is Fleet Admiral Choi Dong-min of the United Earth Space Forces. To the Voss hegemony, to the Galactic Council, and to all civilizations listening. You asked what humanity could offer the galaxy. You mocked our ships, laughed at our technology, and dismissed us as primitive children." He paused, letting his words sink in across the galaxy. "You wish to see what humanity truly offers the stars. Observe." The response from the Voss fleet was immediate. Plasma cannons that could melt mountains fired everything they had at the Taguk. Energy beams hot enough to boil oceans struck the Dreadnought's hull in a light show that could be seen from Earth. And then the weapon's fire simply stopped existing. The Taguk's quantum displacement fields absorbed every shot, converting the enemy's attacks into harmless energy that dissipated into space. The massive ship didn't even slow down. "Impossible," whispered Admiral Morketh aboard his flagship. "Nothing can absorb that much energy." Dongmin's response was gentle, almost apologetic. The Taguk's main guns fired once, a single pulse of energy that didn't flash or explode or make any dramatic display. It simply reached out and touched half of the enemy fleet, and those ships ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not vaporized, but deleted from reality, as if they had never been built. One moment they were there, the next moment there was only empty space where they had been. "How?" gasped Thekmar, staring at his instruments. "Where did they go?" But Admiral Morketh wasn't listening. His attention was fixed on something even more impossible. Across human space, reality was tearing open in 6 other locations. From each tear emerged another dreadnought identical to the Taguk. 7 ships, each one large enough to be mistaken for a moon, each one carrying enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. We have to retreat," Morketh whispered. The remaining Voss ships fled toward the edge of the system, their weapons silent and their shields at maximum power. They had come to conquer humanity, and instead found themselves face to face with technology that made their own seem like stone axes. Within hours, the alien fleet was gone, jumping to hyperspace as fast as their drives could carry them. Across the galaxy, emergency sessions were being called on every major world. The betting pools in the Galactic Council chambers had gone silent. Representatives who had been laughing about humanity's inevitable defeat were now trying to understand what they had just witnessed. "How many more ships do they have?" asked one terrified delegate. "How long have they been hiding this technology?" What else don't we know about them? The questions flew around the chamber, but no one had answers. The humans had fooled everyone, not just the Galactic Council, but every intelligence service, every spy network, every civilization that thought they understood what Earth was capable of. Commander Li Jin-ho, the same human who had sat quietly, through the Council's mockery 6 months earlier, appeared on their main screen. But this time he wasn't asking for anything. "Honored representatives," he said, his voice carrying none of the deference it had held before. "Humanity wishes to inform the Galactic Council that we are withdrawing our application for membership." The chamber erupted in confused voices. "Withdrawing? After demonstrating that kind of power?" Jin-ho continued, his words calm and measured. "However, we extend an invitation for diplomatic contact between equals. Any civilization that wishes to establish peaceful relations with humanity is welcome to do so." The transmission ended, leaving the Council in stunned silence. Slowly, the truth began to dawn on them. Humanity had never been seeking permission to join the galactic community. They had been evaluating whether the galactic community was worth joining, and apparently they had decided it wasn't. But they were still offering friendship to anyone wise enough to accept it. The galaxy would never be the same.